Hey guys, it's Naya. So first things first, my hair is back to black. I just couldn't stand the blonde. I really didn't like it on me at all. I really liked having black hair, and so it's back. I feel so much more confident now. The other couple things I wanted to talk to you about was I apologize for being gone. My computer stopped working, so I had to send it into ASUS to get it fixed, and then came back a few weeks later. On top of that, I had some personal things going on, and school starting back up, and all that nice neat stuff. So I had to get back into the swing of doing college. I do apologize for my absence, but I promise you I'm back and I'm ready to make more videos. If you guys have specific days that you would like videos on, if you would like it to be consistently Fridays or Mondays or Wednesdays, any of those 3 days, just let me know. So today in this video, before I ramble even more, we're going to be talking about tarot cards. I was going to do a tarot and pendulum video, but I decided to just do a whole video on tarot, and we will do a pendulum video if you so wish. So we're going to jump right into the video, because otherwise I'll ramble forever. So let's get started. Alright, so first things first is choosing your tarot deck. That's very important. I find the easiest thing is just going with your gut. If you feel really drawn to a deck, even if it's just because it's pretty, that's a reason to go get it. That's a reason for you to feel a connection to it. It may not be like a strong, like, that deck, honey. It might be something you need to think about over time. I know when I was searching for my very first tarot deck, I had seen so many different decks everywhere, so many different recommendations, and I came across this guy. This is my very first tarot deck. This is the Golden Thread Tarot. I'm sure you've heard about it. It's kind of everywhere. It's on so many blog posts. It's everywhere. So I was going through Etsy. Etsy's a great place to find tarot decks, especially if you want something very specific to you. I love Etsy, but I found this guy through Etsy. I'll leave a link for him down below if you would like to check this deck out. So I saw this deck and I was like, wow, I really like how that looks. I'm very drawn to the artwork of this deck. I just liked how it looked. I also kind of got some Hades vibes from it. So I really liked the idea of this deck. But I didn't get it right away. I kind of slept on it a couple nights and kind of meditated on it and really made sure that this was a deck, especially if you're shopping for decks online. It can be a little bit more different because you're not feeling them. It's not like physically in your hands so you can touch and really get energy off of it. It's a lot easier when you can buy decks in person. But for those of us that are buying online, I highly recommend, favoriting a few, keeping those in mind, meditating on it, thinking about it. Don't just impulse buy decks. Does that make sense? So, picking your tarot deck is very important. This was my very first one. I loved how this looked. I had really good reviews. I also recommend if you're getting into tarot, please make sure you get tarot decks and not oracle decks. Once you think you've gotten to a point where you totally understand tarot, even though you'll never fully understand tarot, once you think you've gotten to a point where you can kind of understand and read cards well, then you can kind of move on to oracle, but I would stick with tarot for a while, especially if you're starting out with this kind of divination. So I started out with the Golden Thread, and then I got the 78 Tarot of Water deck. I love, 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 love this deck. So once again, make sure that you're drawn to it, meditate on it, sleep on it. Even if you're buying it in person, you might want to kind of think about it at first. Don't try to just grab it because it's the first tarot deck you see, So yeah, very important that you pick a deck that you're drawn to. So now that we've established that you've been drawn to your deck, you love your deck, you've gotten it home. Once you have brought it home, even if it's a brand new deck, I would cleanse it. Some people will, you really don't have to if it's a brand new deck, like, you unwrapped it yourself, all that stuff, no one else has touched it, then you probably could get away with not cleansing it, but I still like to cleanse it because I'm anal about that, and I just like to make sure that my things are cleansed and with pure good energy when I get them. So I would go ahead and cleanse it. You can cleanse it in any way, shape, or form that you feel drawn to. I just like to cleanse with California white sage. That's so cliche, I know, but I really like to cleanse with that. You can cleanse with all kinds of things. It's up to you how you personally would like to cleanse it. I do not like to use the term smudging because that is a Native American term that I am not a part of. I'm not a part of that culture, so I feel weird using it, so we're going to say cleansing. I like to do that. I also this is strange, but bear with me, I like to have running water. If I can, I like to use rainwater because rainwater is very cleansing in its nature. I don't like stick the deck under the rain. Don't do that. But if you collect rainwater or that sort of thing, then I like to pour it, and as I pour it, I kind of like to here's some visual for you. I kind of like to keep the deck near the water, kind of let it run close to it, and I visualize it kind of taking over the deck and clearing it out of any bad vibes or any, you know, any vibes that are already in there that aren't mine. So I just like to cleanse it, make sure it's all good. I'll cleanse the box, and then I will take my cards out. I usually like to split them in half. And then I'll fan them out and cleanse them that way. And same with the other half. So that's how I usually like to cleanse it, because I really want to make sure I get the cards nice and cleansed. I don't want to miss anything or things like that. So once I've cleansed it, I like to sit down and just kind of go through the cards if I have the time. I'm not going to lie to you, I don't always have the time to sit there and go through each individual card and just kind of stare at it like, what does this mean to me? You may not have time to do all that, but I highly recommend that you sit down with your deck and just kind of like go through your cards and pick out ones that you feel really drawn to, ones that just kind of catch your eye, that you're like, interesting. It could be a very common card, you know, it could be like the Fool or something, and you're like, why do I care about this card? You know, that could have some serious importance in your life. It's funny because one of the cards that I have always ended up in my life, one that I never kind of wanted in my life, to be honest. Go ahead and find it for you in this lovely deck here. I know it's in here because I have seen it so many times fall out of my deck, and it's been pulled in my daily tarot readings. It's everywhere for me. And that is one of the major arcana. Found it. So with this specific deck, I always end up somehow getting the Empress in my drawings. So the Empress means motherhood, fertility, and nature, and strength. So I really like that card, but I'm also a little bit like, why are you giving me this card, fam? What's up with that? So anyway, just pick out cards that you feel drawn to, whether it's because the artwork's beautiful of that card, or whether it's because the name or the phrasing of it just kind of strikes a chord with you. I highly recommend that you go ahead and look into that. Find out what those cards mean and really take that to heart and just study it for a little bit. But if you have the time, go through cards individually, meditate on them, think about it if you have the time, or spread it out over a few days. The thing that I like to do is I will do a reading after I've cleansed it, after I've looked over them. I will do a first reading. I have a couple links to some new tarot deck readings down below if you would like those. So I do a reading. Now this reading will usually tell me the personality of my deck, what its strengths are, what its weaknesses, although I don't like to use the term weakness, but it kind of tells me basics about the deck. Of course, right away, without having any firm connection with this deck, the readings might be a little bit off. They might not sound too right, but I like to get an initial reading just to have that in my head. I like to keep a log of it, like to write it down. Just something to think about and meditate with. Then I like to carry my deck everywhere I go, because it's important to me to create that connection with my deck, to keep it with me, to keep my energy and its energy kind of flowing together and as one, basically. So what I like to do is carry it with me everywhere I go, whether it's my purse or my backpack. The other thing that I'll do is I actually will put it next to my bed, in between the bed frame and the mattress, and I'll let it while I sleep, because sleeping is an amazing way to connect with objects, whether that be crystals, tarot cards, anything, wands, any of that. So it's really good to connect with sleeping, because when you sleep, you have dreams, you're in your deepest part of your subconscious, you are vibing, essentially. And it's very good to have your decks around close to you to really feed off that energy. It can also influence your dreams. I've had plenty of dreams that I'm sure have been influenced by my tarot deck. So then after I've done that for about like a week, I'm very patient with my tarot decks, for like a week or so, and then I'll pull it out and I'll do another getting to know you tarot reading, in which I will do the same layout, figure out what it has to tell me, what its personality is, all that nice neat stuff. So every deck has a personality, which is another part that I will talk about. Every single deck that you get will have a different personality. Even if you end up with like a similar deck, you'll still end up with a different personality. So my Golden Thread Tarot for me personally is very much like a father figure. It's very similar to how Hades and I relationship is. It's very big brothery, fathery vibe, protective, but very straight up with me. If I'm being an asshole, it's like, hey, you're being an asshole, stop it. So this deck is very, very important to me. It's just very straight with me. It doesn't play games. It just tells me up front what's wrong with me. Why am I doing this? How can I fix it? It's all laid out for me, which is kind of nice, but it's also kind of blunt. And sometimes I'm like, I don't feel like being told the truth right now. And so that's when I kind of don't like to use this deck, but I'll still use him anyway because you gotta whip yourself in the butt sometimes. Whereas my 78 tarot deck, my Tarot of Water, is a little bit more whimsical. It kind of likes to give me riddles. It likes to make me think and really like reach for the answers. It doesn't really just give me them straight out. It just likes to be kind of like, hey, here's a riddle for you. Riddle me this, Batman, and then tell me what's wrong with you. It kind of likes to prod me to find my own answers instead of just telling me what it is. It doesn't spoon feed me anything, which there's obviously pros and cons to each, whether it's making you think, whether it's just telling you shit out. There's definitely pros and cons to each, and that's kind of up to you and your personal preferences as to what kind of personalities you like in your deck. I kind of like to have both. I like to have a little bit of both worlds. So this one's just also a little bit more dark. This one tends to be a little bit more pessimistic with my life. This one tends to be a little bit more the optimistic side of realism. Neither of them are like absolute worst, absolute best situations. They'll tell me kind of more on the realistic side of it, but it'll be more like pessimistic side of realism, more optimistic side of realism. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if I'm making any sense. But personalities are another thing in your decks, and that's something you really should keep an eye out for when you're getting to know your deck. Personality is very important to get to know your deck. So once you have established a good connection with your deck, you're ready to actually start reading tarot. And that's something that is going to take time. And I'm a very impatient person, to be completely honest with you. Very impatient. And I like to have my things right away. I like to be good at something right away. I hate taking forever to learn things. That is why I could never fully play an instrument. That is why I could never learn new things that took me a long time, because I'd get very impatient and I'd be like, I just want to be good at this. I'm sick of having all these mistakes. I'm sick of making mistakes because I'm such a perfectionist, especially with myself. I can't stand when I make mistakes. But if I'm training someone else, if I'm teaching someone else, I'm like, you know what? It's fine if you make mistakes. It takes a process. But for me, I don't take that advice. I tell myself, you should be good at it already. You should already know what you're doing. And that's not true. And that comes with everything, including tarot readings. So one of the cool things that I just love this. My grandmother, who has passed, she's my late grandmother, she and I were very close, but my mom actually handed me this, which is her notes on tarot readings. I've always known that she liked my mother and my grandmother both very spiritual in nature, very different spiritual than I am though, but they still loved tarot. They liked doing cleansings, things like that. So she gave me my grandmother's notes. So I totally recommend getting notes. If you have people around in your life that have done tarot or like to mess around with tarot or have, notes on it, I highly recommend asking them, seeing what their perspectives are, seeing what they found to be important. That's always nice to have that like incoming information from other people to kind of learn and build off of. So this is her notes on basic layouts and tarot basics. And it gives you a couple spreads on here. I'm so happy to have been given this because that's just so like heartwarming and very special to me that this, that she did this as well. Has a chakra layout in here, a zodiac layout, which is really neat. We do have a Rider-Waite deck somewhere in my house. We don't know where it is, but I would love to have that because I'd love to get the vibes off of that. Used decks are great as well if you don't feel like buying a new one. Those are great. I highly recommend cleansing those when you get them, but used decks are wonderful to have around as well. So, just another option.